Welcome to A Woman's Strength, empowering stories from struggles to triumph. I'm Rosita, your host, fellow warrior, and advocate for resilience and empowerment. Through this podcast, we share authentic stories of women who have faced adversity and emerged as living testimonies of strength. Their stories will inspire you to break free from limitations, embrace your authenticity, and rise above the challenges life throws your way. Together, let's discover the strength within us and create a community of empowered women who support and uplift one another. Join me as we uncover the keys to resilience, self-discovery, and integrating faith with personal growth. A woman's strength begins now. Hey guys, welcome and thank you for joining A Woman's Strength, empowering stories from struggles to triumphs. So we're not staying in the struggle, we're moving forward into triumph, victory, right? My guests are women who share their stories of their struggles, of their self-doubt, and then being victorious in the end. That's the big thing. And listen, sharing stories or listening to stories of women that have overcome always gives me hope and it ignites my strength. So that's why this podcast is so important. So we provide stories from women, different walks of life, different struggles, and how they overcame to give you hope and strength to keep moving forward. My name is Rosita Perez. I am a self-discovery coach as well as your host for this podcast. And I have with me today, Carolyn Deck. Hi, Carolyn.
Rosita, excited to be here. Thank you for the privilege.
Carolyn is a wife. She's a mother of 5. She's the author of Above the Turbulence, which she will talk about later in our podcast. She's a traveler. I just spoke to her last week. She was in Greece and now she is in Chicago, right?
Yes, back home.
Yes. And her motto is that she lives a life of hope. So welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. Thank you for sharing your story of struggle and how you overcame. A lot of times that is very near and dear to our heart because it was so painful, whatever we went through. But being able to get through it, especially with God's help, makes the biggest difference in the world, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The outcomes are transformative and, as you say, victorious.
Carolyn, let's jump in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was thinking as you gave my intro that is so true. You know, life still continues to throw challenge, doesn't it? Because it's continually changing. I think that's part of the challenge, isn't it? Alluding to your point again, that we have choices. God made us that way very uniquely, that he made us with choice from the very beginning. And yes, we are free to choose, but we are not free from the consequences of choice. I don't know if it hurts the most. Maybe it's harder to get over when we feel the victim. I didn't choose that, but I've had to struggle with the result of that. And that's been part of my challenge through my life. And, you know, coming out of dysfunctional family, traveling out of that, I guess that's the theme of my life now. I've been traveling actually ever since. And that's some 40 something years. And that in itself has been amazing. Actually, I've learned to embrace that actually now. It's like, I called it, it's a bit like having an unwanted workout. I mean, I've always been fit and pretty strong, albeit that I've had numerous operations. So I've had to learn to walk again, I don't know, at least 6 times. And some of that, again, wasn't brought on by my choices. It was, a faulty hip replacement, very unwanted. But how did I deal with that? Well, initially with anger. So, we need to stop and look at how we respond. And I think that's really, really important. I was brought to this moment of writing. I was in a Transform series actually at church, and God woke me up and said, write a book. And I'm like, what?
Is this where your struggle came in? Where you experienced a struggle and self-doubt?
Yes, no, not really. This was my transformative moment. My struggles have been throughout my life, actually. Didn't like my name. I've never liked my name. I struggled with coming out of a dysfunctional family. I then struggled with my dad remarrying. I struggled with when he died and what happened with his will and how that got challenged by his new family. Yeah, so many struggles actually, Rosita.
Can we talk about the one event where you mentioned that you struggled with your name?
Yes, sure. So, well, it's Carolyn, Carolyn. And what hurt me the most, I feel, was the fact that my sister is Deborah, her name is out of the Bible. His second marriage, he had Isaac and then Hannah. And I think that wounded me even more. Now I'm 40 and I'm like, well, now I really hate my name because, why would dad and mum choose this name? So everybody would get it wrong. People weren't listening to who I am. This is important to me. And as I studied the Bible, I realized the importance of names. The Lord would rename almost everybody he called. Abram is Abraham, Suri is Sarah. So to me, it was like, well, that really, yeah, subconsciously that hurt. And then when my dad had a son and he called him Isaac and he said it means long awaited son, that really hurt so much more because it means laughter.
So what did the name Carolyn, what did that say to you that your other siblings had names out of the Bible, but for you, you were Carolyn and it wasn't part of the Bible? It sounded like it was a struggle in emotionally and
It was.
internally.
Yeah, and spiritually, I guess.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I won't say I felt, well, maybe I felt a little unworthy. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
let's unpack that a little bit because that's a huge part of your struggle is the feeling unworthy. It's deeper than the name.
Oh, absolutely it is. I guess the unworthy, it was like, well, didn't he care enough? Because it was so important to him. And yet he gave me a sort of a pagan name. To be honest, it was simmering away, let's say. I don't believe it defined who I was, but it simmered. It simmered deep in my heart. And so, interestingly, it really was through this whole writing process, the pain started to disappear and actually the healing came. And it was just so incredible how God put those pieces together.
Yes.
That was just wild how he did that and calling me to write. And then I'm like, okay, well, I know he says, well, you got to affirm it, right? So affirm in my word, and then affirm with somebody who is in the faith. And my pastor's wife, I told her, she was my first, but I didn't tell my husband, didn't tell anybody. I just told Tammy, I'm like, Tammy, guess what? The Lord told me to write a book. She go, great, I'm writing a book too. We'll be buddies.
So that really catapulted you from your struggle of feeling kind of like an outsider. It sounds like that you felt a little bit like an outsider and unworthy. Whether we acknowledge it or not, I think as kids, then we internalize it and then it infects
It
every
does.
choice that we make unknowingly,
Yeah,
right? Until we
subconscious.
become self-aware. But the self-doubt, how did self-doubt show up for you in the name?
Well, I won't say it showed up in the name very consciously. It just annoyed me, I guess. Throughout my life, I then learned in the process that I am a pretty strong person and I just dusted that off. And
But this is interesting how God was like, no, because it still triggers you. And so then he played a part, your faith played a part in defeating the self-doubt by bringing not just you writing, but it healed you
yes,
to
so he
write it.
brought it to the surface. And okay, so Tammy said to me, she goes, right, okay, you have no idea what you're writing, you don't know how to write. Have a look at this book. It's called To Be Told, co-author Your Future. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, yep, I'm listening to her. I'm getting that book and I got the study guide. And that's when God started to heal me because in that, he goes, okay, for you to heal. Dismiss the lies that you have perhaps even placed in your own head. Dismiss the lies that you've heard. And let's go back and examine truly who you are. I was back in New Zealand visiting my mother, and I took the study guide with me, and it said, okay, there's importance in your name. Oh gosh, no, not this name thing.
So let me ask you, Carolyn, how old were you when you got to that point?
Mid-50s.
Mid-50s. So
Yeah.
interestingly, I can totally relate to this because God had been trying to work in me for decades. And I just kept doing my own thing, being stubborn, doing my own thing. I mean, I let him in every so often. I took some of his ideas, but I still was kind of going in that self-inflicted path until I
Yes,
got in my 50s as well. And then he really called me.
he did.
So I find that interesting that he's always around.
Absolutely.
And it's
Absolutely.
up to us to spend decades in the wilderness or finally adhere, surrender to what he's calling. And maybe for both of us, 50s was a time where we were more in a place where we have been through life and understand, wait a minute, I've tried everything and nothing fills this hole that I have.
We're so shaped, aren't we? Like you say, we're not letting him in necessarily, but you know what? When you said that, this isn't going to be for everybody. You know, this time of awakening, let me call it, say, all I can say to that is it's God's timing and it was perfect. So for some of you listeners, it may be earlier, and for some of you, it may be around that time, and some of you, it may be later. But I just know that God's timing is right. And when he brought me to this, it was such a beautiful moment. And first off, I wanted to know the meaning of my mother's name. And that was so beautiful when I unpacked her name, and then I looked at her life and went, wow, Rosemary, yes, you do bring flavor into the day. You give flavor by giving away your roses. Your name is Rosemary. You grow beautiful roses, and you give them so freely to people. You're freely to give, and you love. And yet she couldn't love herself, and she still really doesn't. She's still alive, miraculously. And so then I'm like, oh, thank you, Google. What's my name mean?
Awesome. I want to hear what your name means. I mean, when you become self-aware and you start to research and you're hungry to fill that hole, to understand, to get past that pain. I want to hear, what does Carolyn mean?
Well, first off, I was blown away. It is the derivative of the male's name, Charles.
Okay.
Guess what? My father's name is Alan Charles. Wow. Okay. So then as I peeled that onion, I'm like, I grew up his long-awaited son, interestingly, as he called me, the long-awaited son. He raised me as a tomboy. I did everything a boy would do. And I so embrace that, and that's part of my shape. That's my personality. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Dad. I love people. I love travel. I love sport. I love a challenge. I love taking risks. Oh, so I do belong. Oh, it was such a beautiful moment of this fracture. I felt fractured, and now there's this unity to my dad that was so deep, and sadly he had died. So I couldn't go back and ask him. He was already gone. That was fascinating. So, wow, I'm a derivative of my father's name. That is amazing. Well, then another derivative was, it means strong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so living into my name. This is so liberating. I am strong.
That's awesome. That's awesome that not only did you connect with you,
Oh,
right? But you healed from what you thought was a time your name was a non-belonging, a self, like we put labels on stuff that we
oh,
don't understand. And that it broke all of that off.
it did. The chains were broken. That's what the Lord says. And I heard it said that actually, until we stop, reflect, go back into those dark crevices of life and
Mhm.
heal, the stain with the bleed, because we still keep, it's like a scab, right? It keeps bleeding. And
Yeah.
that scab will continue to bleed and be a stain on our life.
And infect all the choices that we make. Because when we walk around feeling unworthy and not
Disconnected.
belonging, invisible even,
Mm,
we cannot be at our best and
no.
live our fullest life. But if we don't stop to understand and discover who we are,
Yes,
we stay in this imprisonment that we have created.
correct. And so for me, it was like, not only do I belong, not only did I belong, I am this child of God that means everything. And I believe that name, I was baptized with that name. God gave me that name. And I was now free to realize the awakening that I'd actually lived into that name all my life. But now, look out, world, here I come, because,
It's like it's like you're rooted now.
it's amazing. And the other meaning was so precious. It meant song of happiness. And my dear sweet mum, I love her so much. And she has struggled her life so long, like I alluded before, in her acceptance. And this is the lies that she's heard as a child. And she still hears the lies of her mother.
What a blessing that you now can coach her through that.
Oh, yes, I I keep trying. you know,
It's not done yet. You're in
it's
the
not
process.
done. And it comes back to this, what you were saying. We can go full circle now, realizing that we have choice. God created us in his image to have choice. He chooses to love us. We need to choose to love us, because what does he say when Jesus gave us, his final commandments? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your
And
neighbor
love
as yourself.
yourself. That's huge.
Wow.
Carolyn, we
Huge.
got about 10 minutes left, and
Sure.
I want to thank you for spending
Oh,
this time and sharing your experience and wisdom. And I'm going to just say, when you talked about what your name meant, you lit up. You lit up with such joy, and that was nice to watch. I just
oh,
wanted to
thank you.
acknowledge that. How can people reach out to you?
Sure. A number of ways. I'm on Instagram, actively on Instagram. So that's lowercase Carolyn.Deck, Deck. You can find me on Facebook, capital Carolyn. Deck, Deck. I'm there. And you can find me on Amazon in the book section. You can either just put my name in and my book will pop up. You can find me there. So, yes, feel free to email me, send me a DM, a digital message. I'd love to hear from you. We're journeying together, let's face it, aren't we? We're
Yes,
journeying together. And
yes.
I had this young Russian girl. Oh my gosh, how Bazaar Harbor magazine. Somehow she got to read my book anyway. And she just was like, wow, yes, we are journeying life together and we're better together. So
Yes.
let's keep this community and conversation going. Let's empower each other. Let's live into who we are, our identities, because we are so beautifully made by by God. And this is a fabulous book, actually. I don't know if you've ever read it, and it's called Captivating: How God Created Women in His Image.
Captivating. Okay.
Captivating. And you girls, you might like to read How God Created Men in His Image, and that's called Wild at Heart.
Wild Heart. I've heard of that one.
Oh, Wild at Heart. Yeah.
Wild at Heart. Okay.
Because
great.
I feel like some of us have been wounded by men, and that can be a huge stumbling block as well. So let's delve into how God created us, man and woman. Yes, man and woman. And embrace both, because both he just adores us both, and he wants the best for us.
Thank you, Carolyn. I hope that you ladies got something out of Carolyn's story, that it brings you hope and it keeps you going. Because a lot of times we put labels on ourselves as kids, or maybe the family puts labels, and we live out those labels when we don't have to.
No.
We can stand on the grace of God and find out who we are so that we can live our best life.
Yes.
So before we close, I want to invite you all to go to my website at movingforwardforlife.com. Go ahead and schedule your complimentary clarity call. It's 30 minutes for you, all about you, and we can create a mini plan to get rid of self-doubt and move forward in your life so you can live your best life. Remember, you are not alone, and you have the power to choose the trajectory of your life. You have the power. You make that choice. We thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Rosita. This has been such a privilege. Thank you.